setup is getting better and better and better. The one and only Zach on the mic, Zac Blobner. What's going on, brother? How are you?
It's tough to follow up X, man. I mean,
The X-Man.
My guy's just out there killing it. No, that was a lot of fun listening. And, man, I'm just excited. Baseball season's around the corner. March Madness. I mean, you and I talk about this every time this year. It's so much fun from a sports angle. Obviously, you're at the Valspar. Like, it just feels nonstop. And then we hit playoffs. And then we get like a nice breath in the summertime, and then it's all over again.
I know. It's so funny. Every time we say March Madness now, the Ronnie Lane match Markness, because I was at the Golden Diamond Source yesterday picking up something for the Callahan event the other night, and it said Match Madness, and I just started dying laughing because I thought it said Match Markness.
Well, I think that's what tripped him up originally. I got to go back and listen, but I think that played a role.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it, because it got me for sure. People, I ran into a couple of listeners over the weekend that were asking about you and sending you some well wishes. So that's always great to see. Some guy came up to me and didn't say anything and bum rushed me kind of and put his fist out like, "Hey man, they did you wrong, man." Blah blah blah. He's like, "I miss you," and I was like, my mom and dad were behind me. I was like, they were like, "Does that happened a lot?" I'm like, yeah, sometimes this guy was pretty aggressive with it. But just I got to throw up the Duke sometimes. You never know, man. You never know.
Yeah, you never know, bro.
We've had a lot of well wishes, which is good. It's still all love with all those guys over there. And a lot of love. I don't know if you saw, I had Chris Harry on yesterday from FloridaGators.com. And, we always talk, Gators, you and I, regardless of the sport. But man, it's not hyperbole to say that this team is one of, if not the best team since the back-to-back champs. Remember the Wilbekin years and, the years where they had some good runs there. And then Walter Clayton, I think he may be the best. He may go down, let's say Florida wins it. We'll get to it in a little bit. But if they win it, he's going to go down as one of the best players in Gators history, right? He's that good. First consensus All-American for the Gators. I mean, what a year, Zach, that they've had. I said this yesterday. Me and my dad watched pretty much the entire Florida-Auburn game. And I was so impressed they were able to go to one of the most hostile environments, not just in the SEC, but in the country. And they were out in front the entire time. It was like old Mario Kart where they started in first and Auburn started in eighth, and the Tigers can never catch up. What a season for this team. I mean, could you put into words what they've been able to do now in the Sweet 16? And, I think one of the prohibitive favorites to go all the way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can't let the UConn game kind of dissuade you from the fact that it's been a great season and there still are a 1 seed with a path, obviously, to not only the Final Four, but a potential national championship. I'll say this, Todd Golden, and you and I have had the pleasure of speaking to him a couple different times, interview style, very likable on the front end. I never thought that this team, even with all the talent they have, would take the jump that they did this year. Last year they just made the tournament. We were happy as Gator fans that they were just in the dance. Disappointing they lose round 1, and we're like, okay, maybe they can win a game or two next year in March. Now we're talking about hoisting a championship. And it's funny you bring up the Walter Clayton situation. Everybody's making a big deal now because he was on the Iona team that lost to UConn, that started their 2+ year run, and then he's on the Gator team that kind of shuts it down. Walt's great, and he's the first All-American ever in program history. But it's wild to me because all my Gator friends are talking about how he's already a top 5 Gator, and it's impossible, I think, to argue against that. But it's crazy because there's so many Gator greats that weren't first-team All-Americans that did win championships, though, and I think that's kind of the one thing holding them back. In the hypothetical you asked about, Jay, if the Gators do go all the way and he continues to be the kind of factor he was like he did against UConn, especially down the stretch there, it's not only top 5, you're talking top 3. And maybe you're talking about him as potentially the best Gator ever from what he does in college. Tough to beat the back-to-back teams.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to love Noah, Horford, obviously. And those are just the 2 main guys, but it goes down from there. I think about Parsons, Bradley Beal. There's a lot of guys, but Clayton's already in that chat, and a deep run for this team could change things.
Yeah, it's funny, too, and Chris brought up this yesterday, that he almost has he's got 30 less threes in 2 years or year plus than Lee Humphrey, who was such a fantastic shooter, had in 4 years. And obviously the game has changed a little bit, but Lee was still shooting. I think of the Teddy DuPays of the world, there's some really good shooters there. The Brad Beals, it's just amazing to see what this kid's been able to do. And, I don't know if we ever thought, and I'm with you, like Golden came in and now all of a sudden everybody's looking at him as like one of the best young coaches in the game, right? And
Crazy.
I agree with you about the whole UConn thing. And again, talking to Chris yesterday about this was Dan Hurley and the way that he was able to kind of keep the Gators on their heels defensively. Like you're not going to see a bunch of teams being coached as well as Dan Hurley was able to do. And you got a game coming up against Maryland, who, ironically enough, Selton Miguel, former USF standouts on there, but they play 7 or 8 guys. And if they try to get up and down with the Gators, I think they're going to be in trouble. But isn't it crazy how things changed within the Gators within 1 year? I mean, you look at, remember the discussions that we had about Billy Napier. Now Billy's he's hitting home runs on the softball field. I saw a video. He's in the home run derby. Now it's like everybody loves Billy and they can't wait. You know, obviously DJ has something to do with that. Obviously, DJ.
I still stand in the same place I did the last
with Billy.
Yeah, man.
Okay.
Because I love DJ Lagway. You can't argue with what he's been able to do from a recruiting standpoint. And I saw recently, the Lagway talking about Billy being the reason that they played so inspired down the stretch. But I don't know, man. I'm still not buying the Billy hype. I think the Gators are going to be really good on the football field next year. DJ Lagway is the truth. Tons of talent across the board. I think the defense.
So what would it make you to change? What would it take for you to change then? If you think the team's going to be good, obviously the schedule can't be much more difficult than it was last year. Even if it's probably still going to be a murderer's row, but not like we just saw it. But I mean, so what would it take for you to change your mind about Billy then?
Proof. Right? Like I don't think I have it yet. I think making the playoff would definitely go a long way. I think winning a game in the playoff would probably silence anything I had in my head. Obviously, context and how that happens. I just mainly I want to see him not hold this team back with some of the ways he goes about his business as an offensive play caller, because that's something he's kind of been weird about since coming aboard. I think that's really kind of why the defense shifted last year, is because the play calling shifted in terms of who was doing it. I want to believe in Billy. I do. But I go back and I brought this up to you even when Lagway kind of started playing more last year. I think about his last stint with Anthony Richardson, who Lagway's bigger than somehow, by the way. Crazy side-by-side picture of them. But, like, he couldn't do much with Anthony Richardson. I thought he kind of fumbled the bag when it came to that superstar quarterback who was a first-round pick. So I think just based on that, that's what gives me the most pause heading into this season. I think the Gators are going to be really good. But are they going to be one of those teams that's kind of like knocking on the door, or are they going to be a dominant force? I think the difference between that isn't the players, it's Billy Napier.
Zach, let's talk some Rays baseball. Before we talk about the team, just your whole – I said this multiple times last week. We were there early that day when it was we're here to stay. I remember getting in there early. We were on for 5 hours. The excitement was there, and now we're not getting to that spot. And we've tried to be optimistic, and we were optimistic that day because it was as far as the Rays have gotten when it came to building a new stadium. And now we know that that's not going to happen, at least with Stu Sternberg at the helm. What's kind of your big takeaway from this entire thing? Because it's just a long process that just leaves a lot of people in the Bay Area miffed and definitely upset.
I know I'm not alone in this. Somehow it's become more exhausting. Somehow it's become worse, right? Like, again, you just think about the years of chatter, but even just the last 12 months, you thought you had things figured out. And I will continue to point back, regardless of where we are now or where we end up. Really, this is falling mostly on bad luck, in my opinion. If the hurricanes don't happen the way that they do, and the Trop isn't destroyed the way that it is, I do think everything ultimately would have stayed on track, and that this whole like original St. Pete Stadium deal would have went through. We'll never know. We'll never kind of see that play out, though. That's a multiverse, right? Like, we're not going to get that version of it. Where we're at now, and I've been saying this to people too, you've had so many different guests on that have kind of come to the same conclusion, even over the last couple months. Like, I just don't see a scenario where either St. Pete or Tampa or the MLB and Commissioner Rob Manfred are in a place that Stu Sternberger is going to be the one that like directs them into the future. Now, what does that look like? Obviously, you're hearing and seeing a lot of different things about like, well, what if these people buy or those people buy? What are they going to do? The one thing I'll come back to, regardless of anything any of us have heard, is that the hurdles that exist in terms of building a new stadium still are going to be there regardless of who buys them, right? Like the timeline, trying to figure out what to do with the Trop needing rebuilt. Like, there's still so many factors that are just massive hurdles, both money-wise and time-wise. that it's really discouraging, man. It's probably the most discouraged I've been since the Ebor deal fell through and the Montreal split city plan. Like it kind of falls in that basket. And the one thing, Jay, that I think is the biggest difference this roundabout is we've always been able to pivot to the team and say, you know what? At the end of the day, screw it, man. Let's just go watch baseball. We'll have some glizzies. We'll enjoy ourselves. I don't even feel that as much heading into this year. And I know it's unique and there's a lot of cool things about the Rays playing at Steinbrenner Field. And I certainly am excited to go check it out and be a part of that like fun, different experience. But I think just in general, outside of a guy like Junior Caminero, it's just really tough to get pumped about this team. And then again, you put the shadow of the stadium over top of it.
Have you gone over there at all by the Trop recently?
Actually, I haven't. In terms of like the stadium, I haven't been by the Trop specifically lately. No.
Yeah, I took my parents. They say hello, by the way. I took them by there. We were trying to kill some time the other day, and like, it's still so crazy to see no roof, and like the sign outside still says Bally instead of FanDuel. So it's just like, it's just strange, man. And we've obviously been over to Al Lang, and the Rowdies hasn't played there. They have 4 games on the road. They won't even play until next Saturday. So it's still kind of like crazy that we're still dealing with this kind of thing. I know there was a story written in the Tampa Bay Times today about one of Stu's friends, saying that Stu's a great guy and everything. It's just like, yeah, I don't know if that's really helping right now, because regardless, and you and I have had the discussion with Stu, right? Like, he's not a bad guy. Like, when you talk to him, like, you shake hands, seems like a nice guy. But then, we had the discussion with him at FanFest the other, 2 years ago about, I'm going to take a loss on my P&L statement. And me and you were like, all right, you're a multi-millionaire. Like, he just does things that just fall on deaf ears. And you got to be able to relate to the people that are going to try to go to these games and support the team. And I just feel like I'm with you, man. Like, I just don't see how a new stadium is built with him as the owner. I mean, whether he wants it bad or not, I don't see how it's going to work out. And especially with Ken Welch, who you and I spoke to, and Ken Welch was one of the biggest proponents of this deal. He put his legacy on the line, right? When it comes to this deal. And he's like, oh, the bridges are burned. I don't trust Stu. If Ken's not trusting him, Zach, how the hell is anybody else going to do
it? And I'm glad you put it that way, because like, it's a short list, Jay, right? Like it's only a handful of us, I think, left around the area. I don't know if there's anybody on the list anymore, or, maybe a friend here or there. Like, again, I don't think he's a bad person. I've stood up in many a chats, publicly and privately, for Stu. And because for me, I talk to, and I have throughout my time the last few years, talking to employees of the Rays that speak very highly of him. Not baseball players, like literally people that just work in the Rays organization that have nothing but good things to say about him on all levels. And that's something I've always kind of went back to. But we're at a point now where like none of the government officials want to deal with them. Major League Baseball doesn't want to deal with them. The fans, for the most part, have been fed up with them. If there's any left, like I'm sure they're off board now. And then you talk about different media members and folks around town with a platform. I don't think there's one left that has his back. So we're just at a place where he's kind of whatever friends, I guess, or people that had his back, supporters is probably a good term. Shout out to the Rowdies. Look at that, throwing some soccer knowledge in there for you. Whatever supporters were left over the last 12 to 18 months, I would say have, for the most part, if not fully, evaporated. And it doesn't mean he's a bad person. I agree. I want to echo that. But from a baseball standpoint, from a stadium standpoint, it does feel like he's kind of ceilinged out in terms of what he can do as the owner of this team in the capacity that he is.
Anything else besides Junior Caminero give you hope or positivity about this year? I was going to ask you.
Here's the thing. I can't even be as fully excited as I want to for a guy like Ryan Pepio. Big fan. Right. Obviously, we both love the guy. Anybody who's met him, like, he's awesome. But like the reason he's getting the opportunity to take the bump is because of McClanahan's situation, right, who was a big proponent, the guy that we were excited about. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm still going to be yelling at the TV, whether it's cheering, booing, whatever's going on. Like, I'll still be supportive. It's just really tough for me to buy into this team as one that, especially from some of the squads we've got in the last few years, I just don't have a lot of faith, man. And it's tough to say that because I've had nothing but optimism for this club the last, again, 5-6 years. And I just think we're at a place now where it's really transitional, both with the stadium and the roster. Right. Yeah, man, it's tough. It's tough to get excited about this team. And we know that they traditionally, I know 2 years ago they had the historic run, but they usually struggle the first month. Their schedule's out of whack. Jay, I don't know, man. I wish I had more good vibes. Junior Caminero, give me all the junior highlights.
Give me all the junior stock that I can get.
Yes.
I was listening to the Zone Heads podcast with Brandon Kravitz the other day. I try to tune in a little bit every week that you guys are on, every Monday. Go check the guys out. And I saw Brandon post something that Cinderella isn't dead, but it's dying or something. And I said to myself, Zach's a Disney guy. How is he going to let Brandon say that about?
I was anti-death of Cinderella, by the way.
Yes.
I had to pull him back off the ledge because he was like, she's not. I was like, listen, man, you're missing the story here. You're mixing it up too much. But I've enjoyed the tournament, regardless of the Gators. Like, I think we were closer to a lot more chaos. It just didn't work out that way. But yeah. I mean, it's the madness. There's always madness, even if some years aren't as chaotic as others.
Yeah, and I think just because this year was a little bit more chalky than others doesn't mean it's always going to be like that. And I actually think of, you look at some people look at, and maybe it's different for basketball or football. Some of the arguments that I saw for football this year was that, when you look at the NIL and transfer portal, and maybe for basketball, you'll say, all right, well, you don't have as many roster spots, right? So you can buy all these guys or pay all these guys, whatever. But for football, the argument was actually the other way around, that 4-star prospects weren't going to sit there and be a backup at Alabama for 2 years because they could go get paid somewhere else at a mid-major school. They'll get paid, at another team in maybe in the ACC, right? Maybe, all right, you're not starting Alabama as a 4-star recruit, but, hey, go get a chunk of change and go play for North Carolina. So I wonder if and I think it's kind of we're going to continue learning about the NIL and the college landscape. I don't know if because you and I spoke about this for a lot. Super conferences are coming. At some point, we're going to see some big, it'll probably be 4 big-ass conferences where you split up the entire country. But until then, I think you're going to have kind of what we saw with the college football playoff, where you saw some blowouts in round 1. And then in basketball, you're going to see some chalky years. And then I think the next year could be completely flipped. What do you think?
No, I agree. And I think the death of Cinderella are talking about these, the mid-majors or the seeds that are kind of feeling, I guess, the pinch the most because of the transfers. Like, I don't want to downplay that. And I know you just mentioned Miguel. I saw Cason Pryor on the bench the other day for Luke. Like, we know a bunch of these really good players from USF even 2 years ago that left and went elsewhere in the transfer portal. It makes it harder, I think, for the mid-major teams that are good to stay good, for sure. But I don't think it makes it harder for the mid-major teams that are good to be good. And I look at, McNeese State with Will Wade was able to get into the second round. Like, that was a popular team. I think you're still going to have teams that pop off. I just don't know how much you're going to see those teams kind of repeat year after year in terms of being like a really big threat in the tournament. But there's still a ton of fun. Look, whether you're talking about the Gators, I mean, you can look at a lot of these teams too that aren't quote unquote Cinderellas, but did use the transfer portal to be in a position now that they couldn't have been in 12 months ago.
Right. Yeah. Chris Youngblood going to play, at Alabama, Tuscaloosa kid, which is great to see for him. Selton Miguel and Cason Pryor, like you said, like those guys were all getting big 6-figure deals to be able to go play for somewhere else. It's tough. And I know that's one thing that Amir told them. He's like, go do what you got to do, man. Go do what you got to do. Go get that bag while you can. Before I let you go, man, let everybody know what you got going on. I know you're working on some brand management stuff. Everybody wants to know.
Yeah, I'm just out there, man. Just out in the world doing things. I think, honestly, the biggest part is just kind of enjoying the disconnect. Something because – And God bless you. I know you're still plugged in. I see it, Emily, still suited and booted, man. Looking good,
always,
my friend.
Always.
And for me, it was just like the disconnect. I've actually found some like peace of mind in it. So really enjoying that. But you can still find me at Zach on the mic pretty much across the board. And anybody who needs help with anything from a brand standpoint, always looking to kind of extend my services and help those that are looking to build brands and stuff, especially from scratch. I know there's a lot of small businesses that are just like, we're looking for any kind of direction at all. I can help you out on that, man. But yeah, man, just kind of enjoying sports from a different angle and still love seeing you out here, man, crushing it. Like I said, whether it's being at the Valspar, being at Emily, having X on, like you're doing a great job and just love what you're doing with the podcast, man.
Thanks, buddy. Yeah, I got Ryan Callahan coming up next. So we got to, this is an all-star crew today. Fitting right in, buddy. And then let everybody know when they can hear, the Zone Heads podcast and everything you're doing with Brandon as well.
Thank you. I appreciate the shout out on that too. Yeah. Brandon and I are still doing a lot of stuff. Every Monday, you can find us around 10 a.m. Just look up Zoneheads. Zoneheads Media is the website. You can find Zoneheads podcast pretty much across the board, across social media. Sharing it on my Facebook, on their profile page, on Instagram, Twitter. It's all over the place. Just talking sports, man. Like I said, really laid back. The Hawaiian shirt was on purpose. Like, just I'm finding the zen. I feel like Phil Jackson, right? Like, I'm finding the zen, Jay. I'm finding the zen these days.
I feel like you have your own like little Dave Willsy kind of, Tommy Bahama kind of thing going on.
Opening day is coming around the corner. We always think about Dave a little bit more when we get closer to that first game, for sure.
Yeah, you got that right. All right, Zach on the mic. Go check him out when you're trying to build that brand. And, of course, check out the Zoneheads around 10 a.m. every Monday morning. All right, brother. I appreciate your time. Go Gators. I'm going to be pulling for you guys, except when they play my Dukies. But you know what?
You mentioned Mario Kart. That might be the blue shell that finally gets them.
That's right. I actually picked Alabama to win because I couldn't pick Duke and I couldn't pick Florida. I had to go off the reservation a little bit.
Respect that.
So I was like, I'm going to pick Alabama because I never pick the team that I really want to win because that never works for me, ever. And then my mom, she picked Duke because she was like, I thought you were going to pick Duke. I'm like, I'm not picking Duke. My brother just picks Michigan State every year because he's an Izzo fan. He's been doing that for the last 30 years.
Some cheddar on it too, though.
He certainly did, man. Zach, appreciate your time, man. Give my love to your better
brother.
half, and
Likewise.
we'll catch up soon, buddy.
All right, Jay. Sounds good, man. Later, everybody.
All right, buddy. See you, man.